Namaste and hello. Welcome back to another session where we discuss remedies from Dr. N.M. Choudhury's Materia Medica. And as you can see, the remedy that we're going to discuss today is Calcarea Carb. So whenever Dr. N.M. Choudhury starts talking about any remedy, he first mentions the source of the remedy. So Calcarea Carb is actually potentized snow white portion of an oyster shell. So you take this inner snow white portion and you triturate it, potentize it, and that is how Calcarea Carb is formed. This is of great importance, and that is why we have made this illustration, because an oyster shell, the shell is like closed, right? It is closed and the inner snow white portion lies inside of it. Okay, so there is this protection of the shell, the hard shell around it, and the inner snow white portion is very soft. Yeah, and that is how this remedy actually is. Dr. N.M. Choudhury does not write a lot about this, but that is why this remedy, you can correlate the source and the remedy, right? The patient's behavior. So when you see that Calcarea Carb is actually made from the snow white portion inside the shell, which is protected by this hard covering outside the shell outside, then you know that why does Calcarea Carb have this security issues. Okay, but right now we're not going to talk about it. We're going to strictly follow whatever Dr. N.M. Choudhury says. This part he has not talked about, but it is very interesting, and that's why I couldn't stop myself from sharing it. Dr. N.M. Choudhury starts by saying that this remedy is regarded as one of our great constitutional remedies, okay? One of our great constitutional remedies. So, for those who do not know what a constitutional remedy is, I would like to explain. So, as you know, that homeopathy involves proving on humans, okay? So, we prove remedies on humans, and when we do these provings, there are certain remedies which are proved extensively actually, okay, and some are not so much proved. So those remedies which are extensively proved actually have been documented, and that is why we know their mind symptoms, their physical generals, their symptom related to every particular organ, that we know. So that remedy in which we know almost all of the symptoms is a constitutional can form a good constitutional remedy. So when a patient comes to you and you take his whole case, okay, you talk about him, his mental condition, his mental state at that point, and his whole behavior, his childhood, and you talk about his dreams. You also talk about the physical generals, meaning you ask him about his appetite, his about his thirst, sleep, yeah, perspiration, etc. So about that, and about the particular complaint that he has come to you with, the modalities of that complaint, the sensation that he feels, etc. So when you take all this data, especially the characteristic symptoms, you choose from this data and you make a totality of symptoms, and when you prescribe on that totality, then you actually prescribe a constitutional remedy, because you have also taken into consideration the mental state of the patient, the physical generals, and the particulars. Okay, so that is a constitutional remedy. So Calcarea Carb is a very good constitutional remedy. You also find many patients of Calcarea Carb in and around you. Alright, so that is why he tells us that this is regarded as one of our great constitutional remedies. So, as Dr. N.M. Choudhury explains about this remedy further, he first talks about the general points of this remedy, okay, which involves the constitution of the remedy. There is a leukoflagmatic kind of constitution that the remedy has. It is just like temperament, okay, and then the appetite, the skin, the ossification related symptoms, the scrofula, susceptibility to cold. So he talks about the general points first when he starts talking about this remedy. Okay, we will go to all these points one by one, and we will learn about them in detail as much as Dr. N.M. Choudhury tells us, right? So let's start with the leukoflagmatic constitution. So what does this leukoflagmatic constitution actually mean? So leuco actually means white, okay, and phlegmatic, that is the meaning of phlegma, is actually sluggish or calm. Okay, it means no activity, kind of like sluggish. Okay, so leuco means white and phlegmatic means sluggish. So it actually means that you have a dropsical habit of the body, okay, and with a white bloated skin. So what is a dropsical habit? This exactly, okay, it is a dropsical habit. Actually, dropsy means edema. So there is this swelling of the body, okay. So they are kind of swollen. So this kind of a look you can get. And they have a dropsical habit of the body and a white skin which is also bloated. So there's bloated skin. Now, what does Dr. N.M. Choudhuri say? He gives us a very important point, because this is actually very central to Calcarea Carb. It is not a healthy regular growth that we find in Calcarea. So when Calcarea is growing, okay, as a like they are child, and then they grow, and so when they are growing, when they are in those stages, it is not a healthy regular growth actually, but an accumulation of undue and disproportionate amount of fat. You will find most of the times that the Calcarea Carb patients, it may be adults, it may be children, are those fat flabby people. Okay, it is not necessary that any lean person won't ever get Calcarea, but yeah, most of the times you find that they are fat flabby. So it is not a healthy regular growth that they have, okay, but an accumulation of undue and disproportionate amount of fat. So it is not proportionate. So any place of the body, any region, anywhere, you can have a lot of amount of fat, okay, that serves only to make the patient weak, fragile, and incapable of sustained exertion. They cannot do a lot of exertion. They cannot, be very active. They are sluggish because of that. So they are weak and fragile because of that. Okay, so because there is no regular healthy growth, so all the or whatever they're eating, it's getting converted into fat, and they'll have this all accumulation of fat. Okay, it is not, there's malabsorption in this remedy actually. We'll study about it later, this malabsorption, and that is why they are not healthy. Okay. And Dr. N.M. Choudhuri now tells us about the sweat, because he says that like all fat people, Calcarea also sweats all over the body, and that is how he shifts from this point to the sweat. Okay, so when he talks about the sweat, he tells us that they sweat profusely all over. So now, why do all fat people have a lot of sweat? This is what Dr. N. Choudhuri says, but why is that? So actually, you know that fat acts as an insulator, right? Fat acts as an insulator. So whenever anybody has excess fat over their body, they will feel more hot, like they will feel hotter. And that is why when the body tries to cool itself down, it will sweat profusely, because sweating is actually a mechanism that body has to cool itself down. So that is why all fat people sweat a lot. Okay. And how does Calcarea sweat? That is characteristic, no? Every fat person will sweat, but what is different in Calcarea makes Calcarea characteristic, right? So they sweat profusely, but especially on the head and the nape of the neck. Okay, especially they sweat on the head and the nape of the neck. And the sweat is actually so profuse that it will, when they sleep, their pillows will get wet far around. Okay, especially especially the sweat on the head and the nape of the neck, so their pillow gets wet far around. This is a characteristic and very, very important point of Calcarea. Sweat rolls down their face in large bead like drops, and the remedy also, the source also has a bead. So the sweat rolls down the face in large bead like drops. The sweat is copious and exhausting and sour. Okay. Now in Calcarea, you'll see that this sour thing is very much central to it, because they also have a diarrhea which is sour. Okay, they have this taste in the mouth, sour taste in the mouth, and as you've seen that their sweat is also sour. So remember this. Okay. So that is all about Leukoflagmatic Constitution of the remedy. So we talked about it. Leuco means white and phlegma means sluggish. So they have this dropsical kind of body, and there's white puffed skin. There is no regular growth. They have disproportion of fat accumulation on their body, and because of that fat accumulation, they also have a lot of sweat, and a lot of sweat especially over the head and nape, because of which the pillows will get wet. They will have these bead-like drops, and the sweat is sour. And sour thing, everything is sour in these patients. Diarrhea also, taste in mouth also. So in fact the patient is sour all over. That is what exactly Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says. Alright, let's go to the next point. So Dr. N.M. Choudhuri calls this as one of the first remedies we should think of in scrofula. So what is scrofula? Scrofula is actually the Tuberculos cervical lymphadenitis. So it is actually a historic term which was used for this disease only. Tuberculos cervical lymphadenitis. So what does this mean? Okay. So first of all, when we talk about it, so tuberculous means obviously TB, okay? So TB is there. And cervical, because the neck is involved. Why neck? So the what in neck actually? So the lymph nodes that are present. So that is lymphadenitis. Itis means inflammation. So the inflammation of the cervical lymph nodes actually takes place because there is TB. Okay, so these patients are actually infected with TB, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and what happens is in their neck there are lymph nodes, right? So these lymph nodes get the infection, and that is why they get inflamed or swollen. Okay, and it does not look good actually. It's like this. So it's tuberculous cervical lymphadenitis. The lymph nodes on the cervical region get affected, and you will find that this actually, how does this happen? So this tuberculosis, the Mycobacterium tuberculosis may actually be hematogenously spread, that is through the blood it gets spread, or lymphatics only, through the lymphatics only it might get might spread to the cervical lymph nodes, and that is how it can happen. So but how, from where does it get? So there might be pulmonary TB that this patient already has. Pulmonary TB means the lungs are already affected with TB, or there may be reactivation of latent TB. So already they had TB in their lungs, but it actually was not active. So finally again it got reactivated, and that is how from that place it went on through the blood or through lymph to the cervical lymph nodes. Okay, reactivation of latent TB can also happen, and that is how it finally goes here and causes this disease, which is tubercle cervical lymphadenitis, and this patient gets affected with it. So this also shows us, now Dr. N.M. Choudhuri actually says that this is one of the first remedies we think of in scrofula. So how important this remedy must be, because it is the first remedy that comes to his mind when he thinks about this disease. So also we should also think about this remedy as the first one. Okay, so this remedy has a great tendency towards glandular enlargement. So glands can very easily get enlarged. So whatever ailments from this remedy actually has, whenever that patient is facing that problem, the ailments from, then it is very easy for that patient to have his glands enlarged. Okay, so there's glandular enlargement in these patients, and nutrition becomes more and more defective. So nutrition is defective because there's malabsorption. So whatever you're eating, first of all, maybe you're not only eating all the nutrition that is needed, you are not having a balanced diet. Secondly, you're having it but it is not getting absorbed, right? So there's malabsorption in Calcarea. Even if they eat, it is not getting absorbed. Nutrition is defective. Fat accumulation in undue places takes place. We've already discussed about this, and still he is emaciated. That is more important, right? So he is actually, the patient looks fat, flabby, and healthy, but it is not a healthy growth. It is accumulation of fat only, and still the patient stays emaciated, meaning that all the fat is subcutaneously present, but actually the muscles are not very strong. The muscles are not getting the nutrition that they need. The body organs are not getting it. So the patient actually shows signs of marasmus. And what is the appearance? Appearance is bloatedness rather than health. So they look bloated, they look chubby, and they do not look healthy actually. That is about scrofula, right? So next we're going to talk about the ossification point. So when Dr. N.M. Choudhuri talks about ossification, which is a very, very, very important point in Calcarea Carb, he first tells us that the bone tissues here take a long time to develop. So in Calcarea Carb, the bone tissues do not develop very quickly, or as they should actually, on the right time. They will take a long time to develop. Even after maturing, they remain fragile. Okay, even if they've matured, they remain fragile. They do not. So you have these, when you're a baby and you grow up, so your bone tissues are actually forming, they are developing, right? But in these patients, there will not be accurate development at accurate time. So when the patients, these babies have their fontanelles open, have a lot of curvature of bones because they remain fragile. So there will be curvature of bones also. The bones of the legs will give way under the heavy weight of the body, because there is accumulation of fat, this heavy weight of the body. Because of that, the bones of the legs will give way, and there will be either knock knees or bow legs. Okay, so this is knock knees and this is bow legs. This can happen because there is this bone tissues which are not developing. There are these bone tissues which are not developing that can give rise to knock knees or bow legs. Okay, there's delayed walking as well. As I told you, there will be nothing which happens timely because of this nutrition related issues. Okay, and there will be delayed walking, there will be delayed fontanel closure. Okay, there will be delayed fontanel closure. So this is these are the two fontanels. So here are the eyes of the baby, the nose, the ears, because so that you get an orientation of the diagram. And these are the two fontanels. Okay, this is the anterior fontanel, this is the posterior fontanel. And you should actually know the right time of fontanel closure for you to know when it is not taking place on the right time, right? So normally both the fontanels close by 18 months, right? By 18 months of age they should close. Specifically talking the anterior fontanel. Okay, the anterior fontanel will actually take a longer time, that is fontanel will take actually longer time, that is from 7 to 18 months for closure. But the posterior fontanel, it closes very fast, normally only the posterior fontanel will close within 2 months of birth. Okay, so this is what you should remember. So there is delayed fontanel closure in Calcarea Carb. So they will not have it until 18 months of age. Okay, and normally, so this is normal, all right. This is normal and this is healthy. So normally there is this anterior fontanel which closes by 17-18 months, and posterior fontanel closes within 2 months of birth. But in these patients, there will be delayed fontanel closure, there will be delayed walking, there will be bow legs, knock knees, and the bone tissue will take a long time to develop. The head is actually too large for the body in these patients, and the cause of this in most of the patients is hydrocephalus. Okay, hydrocephalus. So for those who do not know what this means, it's very easy. Hydro means what? It means water, and cephalus means head. So there's water which gets accumulated in the head, because of which the head appears too large. Okay, the head appears very, very large. And this hydrocephalus itself is also a reason, a cause of delayed fontanel closure. Delayed fontanel closure itself can take place due to hydrocephalus because of the water accumulation. The head has become so large that the fontanels are not able to close. That can also happen. So ossification, I don't want you to forget at all. This is a very, very important aspect of Calcarea Carb. Alright, so never forget that the bone tissues take a long time to develop. Even after maturing, they remain fragile. There is bow legs, knock knees, curvature, fontanel closure is delayed, head is too large, hydrocephalus can be the cause. Now let's go to the next point. So on skin also, Calcarea Carb has a good action. The skin is actually very unhealthy first of all. So everywhere there's this thing, because there's no nutrition actually, the nutrition, there's malabsorption. That is why there's not good nutrition to the body. That's why the skin also has so that also has an effect on the skin, and the skin is unhealthy. Least scratch separates. What does this mean? So even if you scratch a little bit, least scratch will separate. There will be the skin will break, there will be you will have this abrasion kind of thing. You will have, maybe you will also have further pus formation or whatever. The skin is unhealthy, and so even least scratch will cause problem. Eruptions are generally scaly with yellow pus underneath. Okay, so remember, there is yellow colored pus. Okay, in the eruptions are scaly, and along with there is thick yellow pus in this remedy. Now, there are various dermatological conditions which Dr. N.M. Choudhuri enlists, in which you can use Calcarea Carb. Obviously, there are, in homeopathy, we do not talk about the conditions. It is actually the symptoms that matter, first of all. When you know the symptoms, and let there be any condition, but the symptoms should match your remedy, and the remedy will cure the condition. So, still he enlists some of the conditions for us to have an idea about it. So, in ringworm, okay, in ringworm also Calcarea Carb can help. In eczema, which is a condition characterized by dryness of skin. There is ulcer formation, in which there is breakage of the epithelium. There can be encysted tumors, cystic swellings, lipoma, which is a fat accumulation takes place, and a benign tumor is formed out of the fat. which gets accumulated, and this is actually very important, right? You know that there is fat accumulation in Calcarea carb. So this lipoma is now very, very obvious, right? There's a lot of subcutaneous fat which gets accumulated in lipoma. Is actually, you know, what happens is fat gets accumulated. These fat adipocytes, you know, they form a kind of tumor, but benign meaning that it will never benign meaning that it is not malignant. It will not travel from one part to another and go. It is actually not that harmful. It is there on its own, and it is not making, you know, any changes in or any harm. It is not causing any harm to you, but it's there lying. Okay, you can feel it when you touch it. Okay, so lipoma will be there, and warts. So these are skin conditions, dermatological conditions you can find. Now let's go ahead and talk about the next point, which is the susceptibility to cold. All right, so this remedy is susceptible to cold. So the thing is that in homeopathy we study about this also. Many remedies are very hot, some are chilly, meaning that some remedies are greatly affected by heat and some are greatly affected by cold. So this remedy is actually a chilly remedy. There are great susceptibility is there to cold. So least bit of cold air also comes, and they will have problems. Okay, they'll get ailments. They'll have some problems because of that cold air which has come. They find it very hard to keep themselves warm. Okay, they will have this sweater, everything they'll wear, but still they'll not feel warm. It's very hard for them to keep themselves warm. And the important point over here is actually the sensation of coldness in single parts of the body. Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says that this is a symptom worth remembering. This is a symptom, the one that topples over many others. So these are the exact words that Dr. N.M. Choudhuri uses. So this is the symptom that topples over many others. Sensation of coldness in the single parts of the body, such as only the head is cold, only the stomach is very cold, legs are very cold, feet are cold, etc. So in this way, right, they're very, very, remember this illustration, this drawing, and you will know that they are very chilly. They want to keep themselves warm, but still are, you know, fail at doing that. They have this sensation of, this is very important point, sensation of coldness in single parts of the body, as the head, the stomach, the legs, the feet, etc. And the last general point that we're going to talk about is appetite, after which we will start a very interesting part, that is the Calcarea Carb baby. So appetite, first of all, is uncertain and peculiar in these patients. Okay, why is it peculiar? Actually, many authors say that pica is a very important symptom of Calcarea Carb, meaning that they want to eat something which is not eatable, like chalk, yeah, etc. So they actually, what Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says is that they have some desires and aversion. They desire boiled eggs and raw potato. They will desire boiled eggs. So okay, and they will also desire raw potato. They will want to eat flour. Okay, and they will have aversion to meat and to smoke. Okay, smoking. They not like smoking, they not like meat, they like eggs which are boiled and raw potato. All right, coming next to Calcarea Carb baby, you already know many points about it. Let us see. Okay, let us see. So you know that this remedy has defective bone development, right? And that is why you know that there is this fontanel development there is delayed, it is delayed, and then there is this knock knees, there is bow legs, which means that there is curvature, and you know that they are fat, they are flabby, but you also know that this is all actually only fat accumulation, and it is not a healthy regular growth, right? What else do you want to know? You also know that there is this perspiration in them, which is so profuse, especially over the head and the nape of the neck, that the pillow gets wet. You know that, right? And there is this another point that you need to know, which is a defective dentition. So the teeth are trying to come out of the gums, but they're not able to. The defective dentition is delayed. It is defective. All right. And we also know that there is lymphatic and there is lymph node involvement, right, because of this disease. So yeah, obviously this is not exactly seen in children, but this is actually only a reference to lymph node involvement. Okay, so lymphadenitis. So lymph node is a sphere of action. So lymphatic enlargement will also be seen in children. It can also be there. right? So we already know many points about it. Now let's read it from the notes. So what do the notes say? Even if they look fat and chubby, the children, even if they look fat, chubby, cute, they show defective dentition. So there is defective dentition, right? And then there is tardy development of bony tissues. There's tardy development of bony tissues. There's curvature of bones because of that. There's lymphatic enlargement. There's open fontanelles, right? They are constant subject to sour diarrhea. And diarrhea is a very important point of Calcarea Carb, because there is diarrhea. Diarrhea is a main thing in Calcarea Carb actually. They are constant subject to sour. Sour, why are they saying that also, because sour everything is sour. The taste of the taste that they have in their mouth is sour. Their perspiration is actually sour. Their diarrhea, that is, their stools are also sour. Okay, there's profuse perspiration, especially over the head. There's tendency to obesity and also pot belly and cholera infantum. Actually, this point we will talk about when we talk about the stomach and abdomen related symptoms, and you can add the same thing whenever they ask you about Calcarea Carb baby, or whenever any patient comes to you, any baby comes to you. Okay, we can add the same points as well about the cholera infantum. Okay, so this is about the Calcarea Carb baby. This question also comes in your exams, and you can write all of these things, right? Next, we are going to talk about the mind of Calcarea Carb. So what can you understand by this expression? I hope that you know that this person is actually confused, right? That is what you can guess. That is what we can guess. This person is confused. So let's see the mind of Calcarea Carb. It is also about confusion, and they feel completely blank. They feel completely blank. So let's see. Okay. So when we talk about the mind of Calcarea Carb, we already know that there is a general state of malnutrition, right? There is malabsorption, there is malnutrition in these patients, which again gives rise to the defective intellect. So if you're not having good nutrition, how will you also have a good intellect? So that general state of malnutrition is there, which gives rise to actually this defective intellect, and there's great enfeeblement of the mind. Okay, there's this confused state. The mind is not able to apprehend or able to understand what this, even the simplest problems of life. They're not able to take it. They're not able to grasp it. Okay, it is true that they listen most carefully or read. That is what Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says. It is true that they do listen. Okay, they do listen. They do try to understand, try to read, but their intellect does not seem to absorb even a portion of what they hear or read. So it is very beautiful. See that GIT is not able to absorb nutrients, and the food. What is the food for your intellect? The food for your intellect is what you read, right? What you listen to, and now their intellect is also not able to absorb the food that is there for your brain. So their brain does not seem to absorb even a portion of what they hear or read. Their mind becomes completely blank. Their relatives and friends fear that this person might become imbecile, meaning they might become stupid. So that is the extent to which he is, he has that blank look on his face, and that is the extent to which he is not able to understand what someone is saying. That even, even when you talk to that person, you will feel that maybe he's going to maybe he will turn stupid, maybe he will be someone who is mentally retarded. That is the amount of confusion, blank feeling that they have. Okay, the amount of problem in their defect, that is defective problem in their intellect, that is defective intellect that they have. They cannot seem to absorb what they see, what they hear, what they read. But after that, Dr. N.M. Choudhuri also says that the reverse is also true. For Calcarea Carb, the reverse is also true. What is the reverse? So they can also have an overactive mind. So right now we were talking about a blank mind, a confused mind, but reverse, the opposite of it, that is an overactive mind, can also be there. And that too despite the bodily defect. So we know that there's malnutrition, and despite of that they can all have overactive mind. And as in, so which are the other remedies that have these kind of overactive mind? Opium and Naxwamika. Okay, overactive meaning that the thoughts rush in quick succession. Okay, there will be one thought, then second thought, then third thought, then fourth thought. So there will be a quick succession of thoughts that happens, and it will be so bothering that it will prevent sleep. That is how overactive their mind can be. Okay, the mind is never at rest because of this constant rush of thoughts. It is never at rest. It is never at rest. Why? especially due to fear of some impending calamity. Okay, obviously there are thoughts in quick succession, but what is to the deep, okay, what is deeper than these thoughts coming? Why it is actually not at rest? Okay, that is actually it has, the remedy has a fear, okay, the fear of some impending calamity. So something is going to happen, okay, something bad is going to happen, and that is what they feel, that is what they fear. There is apprehension about the present and the future, okay, about the present as well and the future as well. This fear and anxiety actually makes them low spirited and melancholic, okay, it, and this further makes them lachrymose. Low spirited and melancholic means, low spirited means that they have this sad or depressed mood, and melancholic means a feeling or expressing sadness. So it is one and the same actually. So fear and anxiety will make them sad basically, and after becoming sad they will cry. Lachrymose means the tendency to weep, your tearfulness. So they will become tearful, they will want to cry. Okay, so a patient who after getting afraid cries can be Calcarea Carb, right? Then they have this fear, which is actually dread of insanity. This is very, very, very important for Calcarea. You should remember this. They have this dread of insanity. So they themselves also fear that they might become insane. They might become stupid. They might become completely insane, right? They are afraid of losing their reason. Okay, they're afraid of losing their reason. By reason here means your rational mind, your logical mind, which is able to give able to understand the logic behind stuff. So they feel that they might lose their reason, and they are in a constant state of caution, okay, lest people would find out the confusion of their mind. This is very, 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 very important. They are always in this state of fear, of caution. They feel that somebody will find out this confusion of my mind. They already know that they're confused in their mind, right? They already know that they're confused beings, okay, all the time they're confused. But now they are not accepting it, like they do not want to show it to people that they are confused. They do not want people to find out that they're confused, and that is why this fear comes there, okay. So right, earlier we discussed about people who are completely confused, and the relatives also think that they will become stupid, okay. That is a later stage. Before that stage, this patient will actually be feeling confused, okay, he is confused, but in that stage he is smarter, or his intellect is not also that degraded. He can try to not show that image to others, not try to hide that confusion of his, okay. So here he is wearing that mask, and he is trying to hide his confusion. And while hiding his confusion, his greatest fear is that people will find out his confusion. Obviously, when you're hiding something, you feel that people will find out. When you're trying to show something else and you are something else, people will find out someday or other, and that fear will haunt you. So in the same way, in these people, they have this constant state of caution, because caution means they're always ready because of the fear. They always feel that there's this, people will find out the confusion of their mind, okay. And this anxiety and fear of theirs is actually aggravated in the evening. Despair and hopelessness of ever getting well. They have this despair, hopelessness of that they will never get well, okay. But never forget, this overactive mind is also present, okay. They can also have this overactive mind where thoughts rush in quite succession. The mind is never at rest. They have this fear. That's all about the mind. Let's go to head now. So when Dr. N. Choudhuri talks about the head-related symptoms of Calcarea Carb, he tells us that there is congestion in the head of Calcarea Carb. The face is red and puffed, okay. Puffed meaning a face like this, okay. It's puffed, it's bloated. So this bloated face, it is also red, and there's congestion in the head as well. And which another remedy has very marked congestion of the head? It is belladonna. So Calcarea Carb is actually a chronic of belladonna, meaning that your patient is Calcarea Carb, okay, constitutionally Calcarea Carb, then that patient might very frequently need belladonna whenever they have any acute situation, okay, whenever they have any acute headache, acute cold and cough, they might need belladonna very often. Or any of your patients you're giving acute belladonna frequently, they might actually be Calcarea Carb as a constitution. Okay, so this can be there. So Calcarea Carb is a chronic of belladonna. Now what happens is belladonna you give in these conditions. Okay, now a patient comes to you with some acute condition, you give them belladonna because that is indicated. The patient gets little better, yeah, he's good, but then again he comes with the same situation. You give belladonna and he gets well. So this is temporary help that is being offered with belladonna, right? So in these patients, belladonna though always is useful, but it does not go deep down and does not set the constitution right, है ना? So it is not able to make belladonna is not able to make deep changes in the patient, by which the frequency will stop, the recurrency of the ailment will stop, right? So this temporary derangement will be helped by belladonna, but the real spade work of setting the constitution right is to be left to Calcarea Carb. That is what Dr. N.M. Choudhuri says. Calcarea Carb is a great constitutional remedy, and Calcarea Carb will help those patients. So they, although the acute situation is very much controlled with belladonna, but Calcarea Carb will stop the recurrence. Calcarea Carb will help deep down, right? This is the difference. So Calcarea Carb is a chronic of belladonna. Now when we talk about the head, we also know that belladonna, because it is a remedy very good for headache, belladonna has a main sphere of action on headache, and that is why congestion, you know that belladonna has a lot of congestion in the head, in the same way Calcarea also has, and here you can also study about this relation. Now, how is the headache of Calcarea Carb? So it starts in the occiput. Okay, the headache of Calcarea Carb begins in the occiput and then it spreads over the top of the head. Okay, it begins in the occiput and then spreads over. Now there is great burning in the vertex of this remedy as well. Great burning in the vertex. Which are the other remedies? Sulfur and phosphorus. Both have burning as a very important point. Yeah, burning is a characteristic in both these remedies, and there is this also, Calcarea Carb also having great burning in the vertex. There is the headache which begins in the occiput and then spreads to top of that. All these images we have made are actually for your better retainment, right? You should be able to remember. So whenever you can remember these images, and it will help you in actually remembering symptoms, the indications of the remedy. I hope it helps. So they have this great burning in the vertex and this kind of symptoms. Okay, the marked indications are there. Now see, here again talks about this confusion of senses and dullness of the whole head, and tells that these are marked indications, right? That is how important it is. It is not only like you just read it and leave it, but it is seen in your patient. So whenever your patient comes with headache also, even if he comes with headache, he will have this confusion of sense and dullness of the whole head. It is not compulsory, obviously, mandatory for him to have it, and only then you will prescribe Calcarea Carb. But if it is present, you are very sure of the remedy. Along with that, characteristic symptom is present. Now this is also very interesting actually. Characteristic feeling of icy coldness in some parts of the head. So we've already talked about it. This remedy has icy coldness feeling in single parts, right? Now when we're talking about head, the author tells us about the head only. So there's feeling of icy coldness in some parts of the head, as if a piece of ice is lying against it. So I hope you can see, as if a piece of ice is lying against it. So there is a piece of ice there are ice actually cubes on the head that we have made. So if there is feeling of icy coldness in some parts of the head, as if a piece of ice is lying against it, and you also see that now this patient actually has this congestion head. That is what we read just right now. So congestion means a lot of blood is rushing to that part of the head, like rushing to head, and still she has this feeling of icy coldness. Isn't it contrasting? Because whenever a lot of blood flow takes place to any part of your body, that part gets hot. Okay, you should actually feel the heat, right? But this patient is feeling icy coldness. So this is very interesting. And even more interesting than this, the strangest symptom is actually, in spite of this coldness that she has, we have copious exhausting sweat over the head. So even if there is this cold, icy cold thing over the head, still there is also sweat. So all these things are coexisting. Okay, there is copious exhausting sweats over the head. This sweat is so profuse that it rolls down the face in large bead-like drops. Okay, large bead-like drops it will roll down the face. So that is about it. So that is about the head. I feel that if you remember this diagram and this diagram, you can write about Calcarea Carb. You can see the symptoms in your patient as well. and understand it to be Calcarea Carb. So that's all for part 1 of this remedy. We've covered a lot, and we'll be covering a lot more in the coming parts as well. A lot more about the eye, ear, nose symptoms of the remedy, about the diarrhea, which is very peculiar of this remedy, about the reproductive system related symptoms, and a lot more. But let's now revise what we learned in this session. So first of all, we started talking about the source of the remedy, which is this white portion which is present inside the snow white inner portion of the oyster shell, and its effects. Okay, and that is used as a source, and how it's I first told you about that story, that since it's inside, the effect of it is that the patient also wants security. So since it's a soft material inside, and this is a hard shell outside of it, and it feels very secure inside. Although this is not what Dr. N. Choudhuri talks about, and that's also what I wanted to clarify. So let's start with it. So first of all, he talked about the Leukoflagmatic Constitution of the remedy. Okay, Leukoflagmatic Constitution, and in that you might remember that leuco meant white and phlegma meant sluggish, right? So this patient had this kind of sluggish thing. They had this dropsical body and an accumulation of fat, right? Accumulation of fat, which does not happen in a healthy way, but very unhealthy, and it actually makes the patient weak, makes the patient fragile. Yeah, it leads to it leads to a curvature of bones, and it actually does not give the patient a good kind of energy. They are very weak, and they cannot take any sustained kind of exertion, right? They cannot take exertions. Okay, exertion. So that's it. And then we talked about the sweat, because he said that all fat people are sweaty, and I told you the reason behind it, the pathophysiological reason behind it, physiological reason behind it actually, that why all fat people sweat. So that happens. So they have sweat or profuse all over the body, but what is different with Calcarea? They have more of the sweat on their head. And at that time, I hope that you remember the image that I showed you. The patient has a lot of sweat around the head and the nape of neck, right, and the nape of neck, because of which the pillow gets wet around, and these droplets form a pearl around the face and come rolling down, right? That is what we talked about. Please do not forget this image. And then we went ahead to talk about the scrofula thing, the lymph node involvement of this remedy, in which we always saw this image. This is how the patient actually looks. The patient has these kind of lesions on their neck, because the lymph nodes of their cervical region, that is their neck region, are actually involved, and they get inflamed because of TB, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it leads to a lot of symptoms as well. But what happens is, these patients actually, that also shows you, and these patients have glandular enlargement. They have a tendency to have this glandular enlargement. So glands very easily get enlarged, and they have this appearance of bloatedness rather than health, accumulation of fat, and all that is there, right? Next, we went on to understand about the ossification related symptoms, है ना? तो ossification में we talked about the curvature of bones, because the bones are not very, they do not grow very naturally, or in a very healthy way. The growth is actually delayed. The bones take a long time to develop, right? Developmental delay related to the bones. Okay, development does not take place on time. Okay, there will be, even after maturing, they will remain fragile. There will be curvature that we have seen, isn't it? We saw that they had these knock knees and bow legs, right? We also saw that their fontanelles did not close on time, right? The normal time was 18 months, right? But they did not close. This is anterior fontanelle, posterior fontanelle, which did not close on time. And then we also saw that they had delayed walking. Right? Their head was too large. That means they had this, actually the cause was hydrocephalus. which was also a cause of delayed fontanel closure. After that, we talked about the skin of this remedy, isn't it? We've already talked about leukoflagmatic thing. Okay, after that we talked about the skin of this remedy. So in skin, what did we see? That the skin is unhealthy, right? The skin was unhealthy. Least scratch you do and it will separate, and there is this eruptions with yellow pus, if you remember. Yeah, many dermatological conditions we talked about, especially lipoma, right? And then we also talked about the susceptibility to cold. So in susceptibility to cold, we saw that even least bit of cold air will give them ailments. They cannot take cold air, then it is very hard for them to keep themselves warm. We saw they have this sensation of coldness, right? This sensation of coldness is there in single parts of the body, which is very important. And then we talked about the appetite, which was the last point, right? In appetite, we saw that they have desire for raw potato, desire for boiled eggs, and they did not like meat, right? We talked about this. And then we talked about the Calcarea Carb baby, isn't it? So the Calcarea Carb baby had all these features I need not write. There was curved bones, knock knees, bow legs, open fontanels. Baby is chubby but not healthy. There's delayed dentition that you see. And then there's this sweat which makes the willow wet. There's lymphatic enlargements also. There is sour diarrhea that we have seen, isn't it? And this is very important. Sour diarrhea is very important. They have pot belly, they have defective nutrition, they have profuse perspiration, tendency to obesity. And after this, we talked about the mind of the remedy, right? So in mind, we talked first of all about the two important things, that is the confusion of mind and this complete blank state. They are not able to grasp, they're not able to apprehend or understand anything. The intellect does not seem to absorb. They feel completely blank. And the reverse is also there, that which is more important. The reverse is also there, which is overactive mind can also be there, right? Overactive mind can also be there. Thoughts keep coming on and they cannot sleep. They are never at rest because there is fear of impending calamity. Okay, something that is going to happen. Impending means it is pending, it's going to happen. Impending calamity. Okay, there is this apprehension that they have. Apprehension itself means fear of future. So apprehension means जो होने वाला है उसका पहले ही डर लग रहा है. Something that is going to happen you fear earlier only. So apprehension is there about the present as well as about the future. And this fear will make them first of all sad and then tearful. That is lachrymose, right? And then we see that there is fear of impending calamity. So it is there only, but along with that, more important fear which is there is dread of insanity. So they feel that they will become insane because they know that they are very confused to their core, right? They're very confused at their core, but they try to make a image. They try to show to people that they are not confused. Okay, even if they are inside, they're confused. And now what happens is that they have this fear that people will find out that they're confused. So there is great fear. There's a state of caution that actually he says that there is this state of caution where they think that lest people would know about their confusion of their mind, about the confusion of their mind. Right? That is very important. Then we also talked about the head related symptoms of Calcarea Carb, which was the last area we covered in this, which we covered or we will cover in this part, that is head. So in head we saw that this patient had actually, even with this diagram you can learn, right? And there was another diagram also. So there's this head that your patient has, and there's this occiput. From the occiput your pain goes over to the top of the head, and also there is burning in the vertex, right? Vertex mein there is burning. Which were the other remedies for it? It was sulfur and it was phosphorus. Now this patient has this feeling of coldness, icy coldness over the head, and The contrary, the strange symptom is that along with it, there is also congestion in the head, which tells you that, which also gives you a relation of belladonna, which points out the relation between belladonna and Calcarea Carb. And the strange jest symptom is that along with this coldness, along with this congestion, there is sweat. Although the patient is feeling cold, okay, still there is sweat, and that is also profuse. So that is what we learnt about in this part. I hope you remember all the symptoms and all the diagrams also. You remember the drawings and it helps you. Thank you. So that's all for today. Let's meet in part 2 and understand more about this beautiful remedy Calcarea Carb.